Hello and welcome to the Bridetender podcast. I'm your host, Estee Levin, and I'm here to tend to the brides like I tend to the bar. So mix yourself a cocktail and let's get ready to discuss all things weddings. Today, I'm super excited to be here with Rabbi LeighAnn. You might know her on Instagram as Your Ohio Rabbi. And I can truly tell you, like, this is the first time I've had a rabbi on the podcast, and I can't wait to pick your brain and really just like hear your side of the wedding industry, as well as also like weddings in Ohio, because I come from New York, so it's definitely a little bit different.
It's a different ball game. I just want to start out by saying thank you for having me, obviously. But what I tell people, I try to tell people at the beginning of all of our conversations, I hope that you'll consider me your rabbi. If you ever have a question about anything, you
Love
need
that.
anything, I'm here for you, even if I'm not officiating your wedding.
Well, I love that because I also feel like I'm a really big believer in like spirituality and just feeling like connected. And I think religion, just all in all, whichever religion that you're in, to feel connected to your faith, there's really nothing quite that can describe that feeling. And we were talking before just about Israel and like that feeling of like, for me, when I went to Israel, we like climbed Masada, but then that night we like looked at the stars like and I was crying, which is so unlike me, by the way. Like I am like not sappy in that way, but I was like crying because I was like, this is a feeling that like I'll probably never experience quite like this ever again.
That was my Israel moment too when we went.
Ugh,
All the
right?
girls
Like,
were crying at the Western Wall, and I was like, I mean, I get it, but like it was the Bedouin camping,
yeah. Oh my
because
God.
we also grew up knowing about all those like references to like the stars and, our people will be, and that's actually, it all ties into a Jewish wedding too. That's why you are meant to get married outside.
Oh,
So you can
interesting.
be, yeah, so you can be under the stars. And if you go to a synagogue and they have like a skylight, it's a loophole to get around that. So you can have weddings in the shul, but still be outside.
Oh, I did not
The
know that.
more you
That's very
know.
interesting.
So anyway, the
I
moment
think
was
I did this whole
genuine.
thing wrong now, so we might need a redo. But
What's wrong? No, it's perfect. And that's what I want everybody to know. There is no wrong way to have a Jewish wedding. Our people is so old. We've been doing this for such a long time. And I like to say also, Jews like to be fashion. So a lot of our wedding customs are actually like 1600s Germany customs or whatever. Like we pick stuff up wherever we go. There's Moroccan Jews have like a henna ceremony before the
That's
wedding,
true.
which
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I had like a bride who did it. So it's just a very cool topic. I find it endlessly fascinating, which is how I've managed to fill up like 15 hours of a podcast just talk. I haven't even gotten to the ceremony yet.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, because I feel like, I think just like in Jewish culture, the importance of like finding someone, getting married is like ingrained at a young age, you know? And and there's so many traditions that we do at weddings. We drink the wine, we cut the challah, we stand under a chuppah. I'm going a little like out of order over here now that I'm thinking about it, but you know, there's the bride circles the groom, which to me I thought was like really old school. I really didn't want to do that, but for some, I don't know how, my rabbi convinced me to do it, but he did. And there's just, to me, like the chuppah alone is just like, I love that.
Yeah, well, what I like try to explain to a lot of my couples when we're like going through this whole process of like, okay, which things are we going to do and what are you interested in, is you were talking about spirituality at the beginning of the podcast, right? Just like that feeling that like hits you in
Yeah.
your guts. And there are so many things I think about a Jewish wedding that are like built into the memory of like the generations, and so it can hit you unexpectedly. The number of couples that are unexpectedly moved by like signing the ketubah
Right.
is so many, or like, and I tell them too, like, I always ask, do you want to put the wedding ring on the index finger, or, because that's like the Jewish tradition. And I say, listen, it could be that like your grandma sees that and is just so, so
Yeah.
moved by that. And so, and maybe you will be too, so just to really consider all these things. And even if you think it's maybe a little funny, because how many weddings have you been to? How many like American weddings have you been to? It's like this reading and that reading, the sand
Yeah.
ceremony and the, all this stuff does not seem normal. Because like it's not, there's not a lot of Jews. So, but just, to stop and consider for a moment that it has been so drawn through so many generations that like it might be for you. And maybe it's not, but it might
Yeah.
be.
I will say, so I got married almost 2 years ago.
I know, February,
Where I know, I can't believe it's almost 2 years ago because it's like flying by. But we had we said like our rabbi was like so cool, which is like what I wanted. I wanted somebody who was just like not gonna be like stuffy or boring to listen to, like just cool. And when we met with him, like prior to our wedding day, like probably like a couple months before, he goes, yeah, well, you got to have the cantor there. And I was like, Rabbi, I think this is like a little much for me, like, and he goes, no, I'm telling you, we put on the best show. And I was like laughing. And then I was like, all right, fine. I'm telling you, I have no idea how he convinced me of these things. And we did. And all of like my non-Jewish friends at my wedding were like, oh my God, this singer was amazing.
The singer. And it's Cantor Adam Sandler. That's who it is.
It became this like funny thing that we talk about all the time, because I was like, we probably like to our friends who had never been to like a Jewish wedding, like with the Jewish ceremony, they probably were like, what did we come to?
Right. It's like being dropped into the old country.
They were probably like, we
didn't
know Estee was so religious. Which is like not the case.
And you're like, it's not like that for Jews. It's not. Right. That's one of the main right. Like that's not what it is. But that's one of the main arguments that like I hear from people is, but we're not religious. So why would we have a religious wedding? And I think what people just don't have a full grasp of is that like the culture of Judaism is more than like just hating Hebrew school. Like now that you're a grown up, you get to do all the stuff that does help you feel connected.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think growing up, I thought Hebrew school was like the absolute bane of my existence. Also, I went 3 days a week. Like that's a lot.
You did the thing.
Yeah, my parents forced the thing. Like that you really
oh
did.
Man. My kids, I am my kids' tutor, lucky them. So, my baby, I still have one bat mitzvah left. She doesn't have to go 3 times a week. But anyway, yeah, I think the you mentioned the bat mitzvah thing too, though. Like if I had a shekel for every time I got on a phone call with a couple and the Jewish one, or maybe both of them are Jewish, opens with, I haven't been to synagogue since my bar mitzvah. Or I hated Hebrew school. Like it's sort of like a confession / making sure that like I'm still willing to accept them for like a candidacy for a Jewish wedding, and I think that there's a lot of guilt and like fear for people around even the idea of talking to a rabbi, because there's a vibe in some communities of like guilt about what you have done or what you haven't done. But again, Judaism's not like that. You just are.
Yeah.
You just are. You don't have to fill out the checklist every year to qualify for your Jewish wedding when you turn 32 or whatever. It's not like that.
And I always say like every Jewish wedding is so different, because like the section of Judaism that you kind of fall in, whether you're modern Orthodox or just or conservative or reform or ultra Orthodox, like every wedding is different. You have some weddings where like men and women sit separately. You have some where it's full on hora, everybody's in the middle. Like it's different. So like tell me, first of all, I gotta know, like, how did you get into being a rabbi? Because I know there's got to be a story there. Like, like not everybody wakes up as like a young kid and is like, I think I'm going to be a rabbi. So I gotta know.
So being a rabbi, I loved the idea of, growing up in like a majority Christian culture, you get this idea that religion has like beliefs that you have to believe, and then that makes you that religion. And realizing, as a kid and a teenager, that actually the requirement of Judaism is to doubt stuff, to not believe stuff, to be like, I think that's messed up. And like, if you're not doing that, that's what is concerning to Jewish people, like it concerns us if we have kids just like spouting like religious beliefs and not arguing about everything. And the idea that like the meaning of all the traditions and all the stories and all the scriptures is always changing and it's open for everybody to add on to. I just think that it's such a great way to be, because it's a faith and a culture that grows with you and shifts and molds to your life. And so wanting to sort of bring that forward for people, especially into, adulthood. I started out working on campus. I was the rabbi at Ohio State for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So that was my absolute favorite. I loved 18 to 22-year-olds, college students, because moving into a new Jewish environment for them, it's almost like a lot of them sort of had like a crisis of faith. Is kind of like moving into a new religion, because all of a sudden you weren't with that same synagogue you had been with forever and ever, and you're sort of seeing the possibilities of that. So that's why I really wanted to be a campus rabbi.
And no, I think that's like a really cool kind of like way to start, because you're really with like a fun age of people.
Oh, absolutely. I never worked in a synagogue. I was either going to work on campus or in a nursing home. The nursing home people are like my second favorite group. And I actually bonded with Reverend Roxy over that, because she used to work in a nursing home too.
Oh,
and love her. So, and we were just talking about like the wisdom and the watching the way that people develop into coming into their own, and like not caring what other people think about them, and living life fully is like what old people do. So I really love that. But I managed to work at Ohio State for 5 years. I started with one little one, and by the time I always say that I leaned in until I fell over. Like I couldn't handle it anymore. I stopped working there when my youngest of 4 was a year old. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I would always been a reader and loved, especially romance novels, like young adult romance, adult romance
too. Yeah.
Love, like when I was 11, I was like obsessed with like Jane Eyre. And I was like, this is amazing. It's, so I couldn't stand to just be mom. Not that being mom isn't important. It's a very important thing, but it wasn't enough for me to feel like my days had beginning and end and meaning and stuff. So I ended up starting to write. I wrote a bunch of romance novels, super fun. And throughout that time, I would have people who were students of mine when I was at Ohio State asking like, hey, we're getting married. Like, you're the only rabbi we know, or you're the only rabbi we like, or our childhood rabbi's retired, or whatever it is. Like, can you do our wedding? And I'd say, sure. And part of the wedding is sort of like giving a little talk about the couple, right?
Yeah.
So I realized that writing the talk about the couple is like writing a little mini romance novel every time.
That's true. Yeah.
So it turns out that like all this experience writing romance novels, I felt like I can't even begin to describe the feeling of what it is to be a rabbi and then to be a romance novelist for 10 years. It's just, and now I'm starting to see how it has all sort of come together. So yeah, I think I'm actually going to do like a series of podcast episodes on how to write your wedding talk like a romance story, because that's what it is.
And that's also what people like coming to a wedding want to hear. It's kind of it's hard when like you're at someone's wedding and you're like, like whoever's marrying them is just not that interesting.
I always say the officiant's job is to remind the people who are there why they care so much about the couple, and to remind the couple why they care so much about burying each other. So, and that's it. So, a romance, the rule of romance is we know that it always has a happy ending, but that doesn't make it less exciting. So here we are standing at the happy ending, but what's exciting about it? So
what would you say is like your favorite part of like working with couples, weddings in general?
My favorite thing, so I should preface this by saying that I mostly am working with interfaith couples.
Okay.
Which it can make it even scarier for couples to approach me. A lot of times it is the non-Jewish member of the couple who really pushes for the rabbi, because he or she is the one who loves their fiance so much, and they know that it's an important part of their fiance, and they want that for their fiance. So I'll get a lot of couples where the non-Jewish member of the couple is the one who's like engaged and like, tell me more about that. And like, where can I do more reading? And can I ask you a question anytime? And I think that if that Jewish person a lot of times had been marrying another Jewish person, their connection ultimately to Judaism and Jewish life and stuff would not have been as strong as if they had like found this adorable, sweet person who loves them so much. I love you so much. I love everything about you. I know you're Jewish. That's so important to me because it's a part of you, and let's do it and let's really go. And I don't want you to regret anything. And I think that those are the people who are, they're asking their Jewish partner questions, and all of a sudden they're like, can I answer that question? I don't know. Maybe we should all learn more. So it's pretty, I think that that's like my favorite part of working with the couples. Weddings, I don't know. I do like writing the love story, but like as a practical matter, talking for that long makes my mouth feel kind of funny. So it's not my favorite part. I do like seeing the parts where people get emotional and have that moment where they didn't expect to. So the strange ones are a lot of times people get emotional during the ketubah signing, like I said. Even the non-Jewish person in the couple is like, feels something, like this is big. I do like an explanation about why ketubas are important. And it's not even so much like the relationship stuff as like, Jews have been keeping records of genealogy like this for over 1,000 years, and you're the next step. And I think that, that is it for people. The ring on the index finger is a big one. Obviously smashing the glass, but I love to see couples learn with me and realize that there's not a meaning to smashing the glass. There's not a meaning to the chuppah. There's several meanings. And like, do you feel like any of them are applicable to your life? And so often the answer is yes. And then I see people get creative. Like with the chuppah, I had this bride, she was not the Jewish one, and her, as part of their invitations, they had asked their couples to send back just a little slip of paper with their mantra for life on it. And she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these, but I have these. We were thinking about like tying them, like writing them on scraps of fabric and tying them to the chuppah, but it ended up that they actually kind of went along with the same themes as the 7 wedding blessings. So after each one of the 7 wedding blessings, we like read like a few people's mantras, and then everybody was like so involved. So just, I think, long answer short, it's showing Jewish couples and their guests and everyone they know that like it's a really old religion, but the weddings don't have to feel stale or boring at all.
That's true. And I also feel like there's nothing that feels or seems like as fun, in my opinion, as like the breaking of the glass. Like,
that
like,
mazel tov. Oh, people love the mazel. I always do like a little coaching. I'm like, okay, I need your help because we want this to be the loudest mazel tov anyone's ever heard. And it's so funny because after the wedding, I'm going to pick up the glass and making sure Aunt Bessie gets it to take back to the hotel and all this stuff. And I'm hearing almost always the guests are just still saying mazel tov, like to each other.
Oh,
like, they love it. They feel like it's so, I think it feels old and heavy and meaningful in a way that like, what else are you going to say? Good job. Congratulations.
It's so funny because every time that I know that like the breaking of the glass is going to happen, I'm just like, oh God, like please get it on the first time because it makes me nervous.
I always bring a glass because I'm like, I'm gonna make sure that this is a breakable one. I had a wedding where the groom and the bride's son, who's 10, broke it together, and I brought a practice one for him because I knew he was going to be nervous because it is nerve wracking.
It is, yeah. Listen, when I was standing up there with my husband, I was just like, please. Like,
yeah. No, I wrap it up. I put like a little star on the handkerchief exactly where you need to step. so you don't like step on the wrong part, like all this stuff. But you know, the participation I think is the best. I love it. My new favorite thing that's like a wedding trend that we're seeing in the Midwest, it's probably dead by you, but the cocktail hour before the ceremony.
Oh,
So
okay.
I know, yeah, see, it's dead by you.
Yeah.
But the cocktail ceremony or the cocktail reception before the ceremony, they come to the ceremony with their champagne.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so everybody's a little more, you
Loose.
know,
Hmm.
and after Kiddush, I can tell people, I can invite people to say l'chaim and go, oh, they love saying l'chaim. That's like, and everybody's like jolly and in a great mood. And, you know, sometimes often somebody's going to like kick over a glass and it's going to smash before the groom does it. And there's the joke. So like, I think that people kind of enjoy in the same way that you would at a Greek wedding, like you would at a
Yep.
Greek wedding or me, like just to have this really cool, immersive experience. And I don't ever want anyone to feel like they're not part of it. Not anyone sitting there, not the person playing violin, not the DJ, everybody's part of it.
Well, it's also because, and I think that we see this in so many different like religions and ethnicities. Like for us, we know how major doing a hora is. It's like a must do.
Yes.
But you also kind of see that in like other religions and just like people doing something may not be known to them as a hora, but like very similar. And I used to say growing up, like, and that I hated the hora. I know. I'm like,
It's
I know.
scary. I
I
find it scary.
was just like, oh, like, I don't like, I was like, I'm not doing the horror at my wedding. Of course I did.
Of course
But
you did.
like, as I got closer to my wedding day, I knew I was going to do the horror and go up in the chair and whatever. Mind you, going up in the chair, scariest thing of my life.
So yeah, so scary. My family was not up for it, so we didn't do it.
My parents were like, we're good, like we don't want to.
Yeah.
Just my husband and I did, and I was like, okay. But yeah, like there's just certain things, like there were things that I never thought would really have meaning to me, but like to be able to have like both of our uncles like cut the challah because we thought like, oh, that's like really sweet for them to do, and just like you know, even with like the glass that like we broke, we have that set aside to be put into a mezuzah for
Oh
like
yeah.
when we like buy our house. Yeah.
You know, they went out of fashion for a little while. People weren't doing stuff with the glass, and now it's back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like sentimental like that. So I feel like, you know what? I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm just going to like you know, it's either going to get thrown out, which I would really hate, or you're just going to like have this bag of broken glass. It's just chilling, which is also kind of weird.
Gonna get thrown away in the move, God forbid. We have the mezuzah that was 19 years ago now. So that's how fast the trend like spun around. So
yeah. Well, it's funny that you spoke about cocktail hour before a ceremony, because that still happens, especially in like very religious weddings. That does happen, but otherwise it doesn't, because people are like, I'm spending all this money for this day, I want to be able to go to cocktail hour if I want to, like
the bride
as the couple.
So I'm about to record an episode about this because so many people ask me about the ketubah signing ceremony. And I'm sure, I don't know, how much time do you block off in your timelines? 20 minutes at least, usually 30 minutes, right?
Yeah. I'd say
ketubah at 4, ceremony at 4:30. And you, of course, everybody knows you don't need half an hour to sign a ketubah.
Right.
And it can be like kind of, I think it can be kind of awkward and stressful because they're like signing this important document in silence. So a lot of times when there's a cocktail hour going on outside, then you can arrange to have like a champagne tray brought in for the ketubah signing.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And then while you have Bridetender, like it's a little more like festive, and you can take that moment to relax. I know that I feel from wedding Instagram, we keep adding more and more like first looks. So we have like bride and groom first, or bridesmaids first look, bride and groom first look, first look at the reception room.
Now we're having with their dad.
Now we're having first look at your bouquet. Okay. Like there's all this stuff and we're doing, and it's all like for photos and socials and all that stuff. And a lot of times we're going straight from that down the aisle.
Right.
And so if we do have the ketubah ceremony and maybe even a bedekin, I've had a lot of couples starting to choose bedekins again.
Wow.
It does give, I think, that sort of like, it's like a mist of emotion change. Like we're getting
Yeah.
more serious now. We're regrouping. We're going into a smaller, but we're going from all our guests into our smaller ketubah signing down, and now we're about to go into the chuppah, and it gives them a moment for that.
Yeah.
So just have
Now,
your champagne brought in for the ketubah.
now, question for you. Can you explain, like, for everybody what like a tish and bedekin is?
Yeah,
Because I feel like if people don't know like what that is,
yeah.
they're just like,
I know.
what am I going to? Like, what is this?
Good. Well, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. So there's an old country tradition that the bride and groom would not see one another for a week before the wedding, would not see one another, and in some traditions not even speak to one another.
Oh, oh.
And so there's this idea of a period of spiritual preparation and reflection. It's almost kind of like Yom Kippur. You're sort of like abstaining from that thing that you love, and the wedding day is designed to be a ramp up into that. Now, I've never had somebody do a tish, but the idea of a tish is that the groom shows that he's ready to be married by teaching everybody a little bit of Torah or giving like a small sermon or something. I know there's also a smaller sub tradition that it's basically an opportunity for people to heckle him. And there's a couple takes on that. One is that like it's just fun to heckle him, and the other one is just in case he forgets his speech, then he saves face. I have had one groom he did not do a full tish, but before the ketubah, he did give a speech about that week's Torah portion.
Okay.
So people are doing it. And it was an interfaith wedding even. And it was very important to him that he do that. The bedekin is often at the end of this period of the bride offering blessings. There's an idea that there are some times that people are closer to God than other times, like especially close to God. A bride's wedding day is one of those times. So there's this idea that she has like a little special line to God's ear. And so often if you look at pictures of Orthodox weddings, you'll see pictures of she's got a throne, she's got like a big fancy chair she sits
Yeah.
on. And often she's got people like kneeling in front of her or talking very close to her. They're asking her for her blessings for them on their behalf. So she can pray on their behalf for whatever they want. A lot of times it's like the girls who want to get married, but they're not, or, whatever. And sometimes you'll see a lot of pictures with her on the cell phone because people are calling in their blessings.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So you have this like time of separation, like the guys and the girls, and that's like a common, even American wedding thing, right? And at the end of hassling this poor guy who was trying to give this sermon to his friends, they like dance him in
Yep.
to the bride's presence, which is a thing that they do in Indian weddings also.
Yes.
It's not, yeah. So it's like this cool cultural tradition. It's like an impulse of humans, right? So he goes to her and sees her for the first time, sometimes in a week, sometimes in like a few days, And there's this custom called the bedekin where he lowers the veil over his face. So the old school story, which I find a little gross, is that it's a reference to the biblical story where Jacob wanted to marry Rachel, but they did a switcheroo right at the end and switched Leah for Rachel, who was her older sister, and he ended up marrying the wrong girl. So you got to check to make sure it's the right girl. Couples these days are really taking it as an opportunity to have that one last look at one another before they go and do this thing. And I've seen some very sweet footage from Orthodox ceremonies recently where he has got, he's prepared something special to say to her. So he'll lean in close to the bride and say something in her ear, and she's crying and her mom's crying and her dad's, and then he says the traditional verse that comes from the Bible that Isaac said to Rebecca, which is hoping that she be the mother of myriads, which I also find gross. A little. If people want to say it, fine. And I actually think my husband said it at our wedding. Weird. But I'm also asking people, or sometimes when my couples do a bedekin, I do the shtick, and I'm like, this is about looking into this person's eyes and saying once and for all, like, yeah, you're it. This is it. You're the one.
Yeah.
I'm looking into the eyes that I want to look into until my dying breath. This is the moment where it's like all or nothing. And I encourage them to prepare something to say if they'd like. Sometimes it's like I had Adele song lyrics, I've had verses from the Bible, all kinds of stuff. But that moment of, putting yourself intentionally into that closed off space, forget about the first look, forget if your flowers are wilting. Who cares if the cake has melted? It doesn't matter, because you are about to marry this person and you picked him and he is right here and he is so in love with you and so happy to see you. And that's the Bridetender.
Do you hear that, everybody? That is the Bridetender, because
that's it.
It's, you know what? It's hard. I've seen it done many times, but when people like ask me like, what's a tish and Bridetender, it's always hard for me to like kind of explain, because I'm like, it's really just like, like Tish is like the groom's with like his guys, and the Bridetender is like the bride is with like the women in both sides of the family, and then they come together. I'm like, I could never really explain that correctly.
I mean, maybe it used to be kind of like moldy and wooden of a thing where he like went up to her and said the thing and put the veil down. But I have seen mostly Orthodox couples really making it into a very emotional, awesome thing. And I think that liberal couples and interfaith couples should take a page from that book. Like, we have these traditions, like, let's make the most of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's just also like what sets, Jewish weddings like apart, and just something different that we do.
It's an OG first look. The first look, the first look is like, it's a thing for a reason. Everybody loves it.
It's
true. I'm not imagining it, right? There's like 5 first looks now.
There is. There's like bride does one with her dad, does one with her girls, does one with her partner. Like there's a lot.
And now she could get a haircut between the ceremony and the reception too. So then that's another first look.
I know that's too much for me, but
it's a risk.
I'm like, yeah, now I'm gonna cut my hair in between. I don't think so.
It's a risk. Yep.
Well, before Zoom cuts us off, because they will.
Oh, I see that. Oh my goodness.
I wanted to let you kind of share where everybody can follow you, and also about your new podcast too, so that everybody follows that as well.
Thank you so much. I only have, in my first big call with couples, like an hour and a half, and I always feel like I'm rushing through all of the information and I could talk about it for hours. So I was like, why don't I just talk about it for hours? I started a podcast called Your Jewish Wedding Podcast. I thought I'll do like one episode on the chuppah, one episode on, now it's like 3 episodes on the ketubah. Okay. Like we can talk forever, but I really find that people don't have that knowledge and don't have those resources. And I want to be everyone's rabbi. I want to help people however I can. And so the podcast is called Your Jewish Wedding. And it's, if you go, you'll look for it. It's got my face on it. It says Your Jewish Wedding with Rabbi LeighAnn. So that's wherever you get your podcasts. My website is yourohio.rabbi.com or ourfavoriterabbI.com. Both of them work. You can find my podcast there, blogs, pictures of all the weddings I've done. And I'm on Instagram as @YourOhioRabbi. And I try to post there responsibly, like at least once a week. So that's how we know each other.
That's true. Yes.
It works a little bit.
The power of Instagram.
And I want everybody to hear, I want them to consider me their rabbi. And if they need anything, they should drop me a line and we will figure out how I can help them.
Oh, well, you guys all heard it here first. You have to go to Your Ohio Rabbi. Let her be your rabbi and walk you through not just anything wedding related, but just life related, just how any questions that you have to kind of like, get you through even some tough times and things like that. Of course.
The number of emails and stuff I have with my past wedding couples about just random stuff, I'm not in this just for the ceremony. We consider me your rabbi. That's all.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Bridetender podcast. As you know, we put an episode out every single Wednesday. Make sure to go follow LeighAnn at Your Ohio Rabbi. See how you can work with her for your special day. If you're not already following me on Instagram, please go follow me at the Bridetender for all fun facts on the wedding industry, ways to save money on your special day, and of course, hiring the best in the business like LeighAnn for your wedding.
Thank you so much, Estee. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. It was so nice to meet you. I'll have
Likewise.
to come meet up with you next time I'm in Ohio.
Oh, I'd love it. Okay, awesome. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.